Okay, hi guys. So, is my voice audible? Is my voice audible, guys? Please ping on the chat. Okay. Okay, so I think now the voice should be coming. Great. Okay, so welcome, guys. Welcome to this session, and I hope everyone will love this session. This is a very good session where we'll be learning about higher order components in React, and it's a really cool concept, right? So we'll discuss that. We'll also basically try to code out some cool component that you can actually use in your projects as well. Awesome. So, how is everyone doing? And tell me, like, how excited are you guys to learn about higher order components if you already don't know it? And if you already know it, then let me know, like, how many people are there who already know about the higher order components in React. Awesome. So, yep. So, guys, let me just go through the session topics that we'll be covering today. So, in the meanwhile, you can just type your question or anything if you have on the chat itself. So, first of all, we'll be looking at JavaScript. So, what is higher order function in JavaScript and why do we use it and things like that. And then we'll be moving on to React, where we'll be learning about higher order components, what they are, how they look like, and why they're actually used, and where we can use in our projects. Okay, great. So, guys, yes, I mean, the concept is advanced concept of React, but you should know a little bit of React if you want to understand it perfectly. So you should know a little bit of React, and obviously JavaScript is a must, guys. So you should absolutely know JavaScript, right? So that is a must, and we'll be covering everything how the concept of higher order components in React emerged, from where it emerged, and things like that. Okay, so we'll definitely see that, and we'll definitely also look into how you can actually use these components in your own projects, right? So it will be helpful for you guys who are working on a React project or who are willing to like work on a React project in future. Great. So we'll be doing that also. And I think before any further ado, let's, I think, start the session, guys. So first, we'll basically start with JavaScript before even jumping into React and React's project. So let's start with JavaScript, and let me just share my screen, guys, so you will be able to see it. Okay. So, is everyone able to see my screen, guys? Is my screen visible to you guys? Can you see my screen, guys? Just ping on the chat. If you're able to see my screen and everything is fine, just ping on the chat, guys. Hmm. Okay. So, yep, I think now we can move forward. My screen is visible to everyone. So let's move forward, guys. And first of all, let's discuss about JavaScript and the concept of higher order function. So, does anyone know what are higher order functions in JavaScript? So, I'm not talking about React. So, just forget about React. We'll talk only about JavaScript language for now, right? So, is anyone aware about higher order functions in JavaScript? If yes, do tell on the chat. If not, then obviously we'll be covering that. But is there anyone who already knows about higher order functions in JavaScript? And I'm pretty much sure if you are basically using JavaScript language and if you don't know what higher order functions are, I'm pretty much sure that a lot of you might already been using these higher order functions that we'll have a look in a moment. Hmm. Okay. Cool. Great. So Sonali is saying reduce, map, sort. Absolutely, Sonali. We have these functions. These are called higher order functions. Keshav is right. Absolutely right. Okay, so let's just quickly jump into code and try to understand first of all what are higher order functions in JavaScript. Okay, cool. A lot of people are right actually on the chat. Pradeep, Nayan, and everyone basically. Great. So let me just open the console, and guys, just let me know if you cannot like uh, make out the font or anything. Basically, if you have any issues over there, I can increase the font size as well, and we can then basically start with that. Okay. So this is my console. Awesome. So let me just uh, quickly increase the font size. I think this should be fine, guys. So is the font size fine, guys, or do you want me to even increase the font size? And guys, you can definitely code along with me. I mean, there's no one stopping you. Please, I mean, if you want to code along, you can definitely code along. Or since I'm explaining the concept, you can just, look at the code and try to understand, right? So for now, it's not required to code along. But once we'll start the React project, then definitely you can code along with me, right? But now it's not required. And okay, so let me just increase a little bit more. Okay, so I think this should be fine. I think this should be fine. This should be perfect for you guys. Uh, okay, cool. So guys, let's start. So basically, as all of you know, a function, right? Everyone knows what a function is in JavaScript. So a function would be like this: function ABCD, and this is a particular function, and we can just do anything over here, right? Here, and let's do like this. And if I call this function, then it will basically print out here for me, right? So this is basically a normal JavaScript function, as simple as that, right? So in JavaScript, functions are basically values. And what do I mean by values? By value, what I mean is that in JavaScript, you can basically do something like this: print function, right? So I hope everyone is aware about that. That we can basically assign a particular function to a variable, right? And this is in this way we can pass along functions to different variables. And now what I can do is I can simply call print function, and it will pretty much do the same thing, the exact same thing, right? It is console logging me the here string for me right over here, right? So in JavaScript, function is basically a value which you can pass around, right? And you can assign these functions to your variables. You can even pass functions as arguments to another function, right? So in simpler terms, if you see a variable, let's say value is 2, and I can pretty much say I can pass a, right, to a function. I can pass the variable a to a function as an argument, right? And now I can do return 2 plus a, right? And this should give me, let's make it 10. So, and let's name it 10 as well, right? So this is a function add 10, and I'm just passing a variable to it with will basically add 10 to that variable, right? And I can simply call that variable like this, right? And let me just pass a over here. So as you can see over here, I'm passing a variable, right? And similarly, we can definitely pass functions around as well as arguments, right? So we can definitely do that as well. So let me just give you an example for that as well. So very simple example. Okay. So we have, let's just go with a print function. This function, let's go with this function, right? And let's name it print, right? Okay, this is our print function, and this is our print function. If I call print, it would print this string for me, right? And now what I can basically do is I can create another function, right? And let's name it uh, AB for now, right? And earlier I told you that we can actually pass functions around as well, right? So we have our print function over here. So I can pass my print function over here, right? As the argument, right? I can basically receive the print function as an argument over here, right? And now what I can do is I can simply call print over here, right? So this basically print, this argument will be a function. So what I'll do is when I'm calling the AB function, I'll pass print, which will be a function. Right? So let's see that in action. So what I'm saying is when I'm calling AB, what I can do is I can just simply pass this print function over here. And if I call this, it basically internally calls this print function, right? And don't confuse this with the argument, guys. I can just rename this to anything, pretty much anything. I can name it XYZ as well, and I can do XYZ invocation over here as well, right? It's just a name. That's it, right? So as you can see over here, we are basically able to pass around functions in functions as well. So for me, AB will basically be a higher order function. So what is a higher order function? Higher order function is basically a function which either accepts a function as an argument or returns a function, right? So this particular function is not returning anything as of now, but we can internally return a function from a function as well, right? So uh, this is a higher order function. My AB function is basically a higher order function. So what I can do is I can just copy it over here and I can name this higher order function. So this is my higher order function because I am accepting a function as an argument, right? So that is basic definition of a higher order function. And if you did not knew this already, I'm pretty much sure that if you are familiar with JavaScript and if you have been working with JavaScript, then definitely you must have already encountered a few higher order functions, right? But before looking into that, uh, this print function which we are passing, right, this print function would be called as a callback. Why a callback? Because we are calling this function later on, right? We're not basically calling this function right away. So as you can see over here on line, this particular line, I'm passing this print function to this AB function, right? This print function is called a callback because it will be called later on, not now immediately, but it will be called later on, right? And AB is my higher order function. So just remember these two terms, higher order functions and the callback functions, right? So let's look at a very simple and very nice example, which I'm sure a lot of you might have encountered, right? If you're basically familiar with JavaScript and if you are learning JavaScript for a while, you definitely, if you have not used it, you might have encountered this, right? So let me just create an array and let's have simple numbers in this particular array, right? So we actually have a higher order function that you might be familiar with and which is actually called map, right? So this map is basically a function which we can call, which we can invoke on our arrays, right? And this basically accepts a function as an argument, right? And what we do is we generally pass a function over here inside this particular map function, right? So we have our map function over here, which accepts internally a callback. So this is my callback over here, right? I can I can totally name it CB or callback, right? This CB, this callback is basically a function which I'm passing to the map function, right? So now you can understand that this map is basically a higher order function, right? So now what I can do is so using this particular map function, what we can do is if you do not know, using this map function, we can basically perform operations or anything on a particular array, right? So what will happen is this callback will basically be called on each and every item of my array. So callback will be called for each and every item, and the item in this particular array will be passed as the argument of this callback, right? So whatever item first, so what will happen is internally of the map function, we will have a for loop. It will just iterate over this particular array, and it will call this callback on one, then two, then three, four, five, six, and so on, right? And basically it will return me a brand new array. So let's have a look before understanding it more, right? So what I can do is so I basically want to get the square of these numbers, right? So what I can do is I can do item star item, right? And this will be where squared equals to array dot map, right? So if I now look at squared, you can see I have a brand new array, which is basically having the square of these numbers. So what is happening is this callback function, this particular CB callback function is being fired on each and every item, right? It is being fired on each and every item of the array, right? And what is happening is it is returning me a brand new array. This map will return me a brand new array, right? So here you can see the squared is a brand new array. And if I do ARR, it is still the same, right? So array.map will return me a brand new array. And using this callback, we can perform some action, some activity, or some anything on this particular array, right? So what I'm doing is this particular item, first it will be one. I am just returning one into one, right? So it will put that value into a new array, which is this one. It will put one over here, then it will iterate and it will go come to second, and it will do return two into two, which is four. It will put that four into a brand new array over here. This is the new array, right? And similarly, it will iterate over all of these arrays and array items, and it will basically give me the new squared array, right? So this is a higher order function, which is very, very important or very useful if you're basically using JavaScript. If you're using React, Angular, or anything basically, then this higher order function is very important, right? So this is one of the example. A second example which I want to tell you guys is um, the filter function. So many of you might have also come across this filter function. So you can actually perform a filter function. You can actually call this filter function on the array as well, right? And again, filter will accept a function as an argument, and that function will be called on each and every item of this particular array, right? And that function basically returns either true or false, right? So what do I mean by that? Let's have a look. CB, okay. And what I mean by that is if you return true from this callback, then it will put that item inside the new array. Again, filter will give me a new brand new array. So what I can say is if I return true, so it will basically put each and every item inside the brand new array, as you can see over here, right? It is putting the brand new, it is putting the all of these items inside the brand new array, which is at the bottom here. You can see, right? So what I can do is I can just use this capability, and what I can do is I want to get only the even numbers, for example, from the array. So what I can do is first of all I'll get item again. Each and every item of this array will be used as the argument when calling this callback, right? So what I can do is I can return item percentage to equals to 0. So here you can see the brand new array is now 2, 4, and 6. What I've done is basically what I'm trying to do over here is you can just consider it to be an if-else statement, right? I can, if you want to simplify it, right? So just try to make it into a if statement. What I'm actually doing here is if uh, if this particular item is divisible by 2, if the remainder equals to 0, then return true, else return false, right? So if you want to simplify it even more, what I can do is I can put this into an if statement, right? If item equals to 0, 2, if item percent 2 equals to 0, then return item, right? And now here you can see this is as simple as that. And here you can even put an else over here. If item percent 2 not equals to 0, then it will return false, right? So this callback should return either true or false. And for whatever item in the array, if it returns true, that particular item will be put inside the brand new array, right? So it will put inside the brand new array. Awesome, right? So I hope you are able to understand this. I can say evens and I can print evens over here. I only get 2, 4, 6, right? And my array is still the same. ARR array is still the same, right? So this is not making the change inside this particular array. It is absolutely not making that change inside the array. It's creating a new array, right? So the internal functionality is of filter is basically what it is doing is it is just creating a brand new empty array and it will return that particular array, right? And it will call this particular callback on each and every item of this array, right? So what is the benefit of this, right? So for initially what you would do is if you want to filter things like this, what you would do is you would do where some array, right? You would do like this, and then you will apply a for loop, right? You would apply a for loop onto array dot length, right? You will apply, you will iterate over this array, and you will put if else condition inside this for loop that hey, if this item is divisible by 2, then push that item into the new array, right? Into the sum array. So you would do something like that, but that would basically take 5, 6 lines of code, and it would be a little messy, right? You can totally do that as well. But let me show you one more advantage of this using higher order functions, right? This is the alternate way, right? So one more advantage is basically what you can do is we have this evens array, right? You can just grab this function, right? And you can name it is E1, right? I'm naming this function is E1, right? Let me just clear this. I'm naming this function is E1, right? And now what I can do is I can basically pass this is E1 function as the argument of filter, right? And it will still work, right? So now you see how powerful is this. Now I can basically reuse this is even function as well somewhere else, right? I can totally do that as well. For example, if you want to get odds, what you can do is, I think reject would work. Okay, so we don't have a reject function. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is you can basically reuse this is even function anywhere. I can simply call is even like this as well and pass 2, 3 or whatnot, right? So this is the power of using high order functions, as well as these callbacks can be totally separated into a new function, and we can just pass the reference of these functions like this, right? This is the basic power of our higher order functions. And higher order function is basically the concept of functional programming, right? So functional programming in JavaScript. Okay, so Rohit is asking what is a callback function. So Rohit, over here in this particular line is even is basically a callback function. Callback is basically, by the name it says, that you will be calling it back somewhere after, right? You're not calling this is even right now as of now, right? You're not calling this is even over here. It will be called sometime later on, right? So you can just go by the name and say that this function is a callback. It will be called later on, right? Okay, so and my filter function is the higher order function, right? Filter function. This filter is a higher order function, and this is even is the callback because it will be called back later on, right? It will not be called as soon as possible over here. So just let me just reiterate the definition. So definition of a higher order function is that it will receive a function as an argument, or it will basically return a new function, right? A function returning a function, or a function accepting a function as an argument. That is basically the higher order function. And you totally have a lot of higher order functions as well. You have array.reduce, array.map, filter, and sort, and other functions as well, right? So there are a lot of functions out there which are higher order functions, and you have seen the power of it. And this concept we will use in React as well, right? So this is a very powerful concept, and this is used in React as well. Okay, so okay, so before jumping into React, let's just discuss what are higher order components in React as well, right? So a higher order. Okay, so before moving over there, let me know if you guys have any problems or any questions over here. Up until now, till now we have discussed only higher order functions in JavaScript. Before moving on to React and higher order components, if you have any issues or any, if you need any clarity, do let me know. Just ping in the chat, guys. Yes, Keshav. So basically, functional programming is another way of writing code. It makes your code more cleaner and effective as well. As you can see in this example over here, what it did was it made my code very clear and reusable as well. I can reuse this callback function, and I can even I can basically even use this function in different functions as well, right? So it makes it cleaner. And if you would have used the for loop and things like that to basically achieve what you want to achieve over here, I want to get the events out of the array. If you're basically using for loop, then it will be a tidy task, right? It will be a tedious task, sorry. So that is that, right? Mhm. Sure, Shan Mugam. I'll definitely let you know once when you can start coding. So, okay, so Pranjal, if we go into the reduce function, it will take up a lot of time, and we don't have that because now we have to move to React. But reduce is, guys, another function, another higher order function, which basically perform some actions. You can perform some actions on an array using the reduce function. It's kind of similar to map in those terms. So you can do, I mean, do have a look. If we have time at the end of the session, we can definitely go and look into that as well. So arrow functions, guys, this is a normal function, right? We also have arrow functions. Arrow functions are nothing, just a shorter way of writing functions. So if I go over there and let me just clear the console first, and let me just grab this function. What I can do is, if I remove everything over there, right? So if I do something like this, so using arrow function, I can make my code even cleaner. So what I can do is I can remove everything over here, So this is basically my arrow function, and if I do evens, it should give me the evens, right? These are arrow function, guys. So uh, if you only have a single argument, what you can do is you can just remove the parentheses and you can put an arrow over here. And if you only have one line of code in your function, and you can just put it like this, right? Without even the putting these curly braces in a function, right? That is an arrow function. So we'll not discuss about the properties of arrow function. That is a different topic altogether. But this is a simple arrow function over here, right? And we can rewrite this to be something like this as well, right? We can totally make it like this. So though, so this one we can do return. So this statement and this particular statement and this statement is exactly the same. But since we only have one line of code, we can avoid using return and we can avoid using these curly braces as well as in line one, right? So using arrow functions and using functional programming concepts, you can make your code much cleaner. Okay. Hmm. So yes, guys, all of these functions, higher order functions, filter, for each, sort, and everything will work on this particular array as well only, right? It can totally do that. Okay, guys. So before further ado, let's just start. I mean, with our main topic, which is learning about higher order components. So since now you're familiar with the concept of higher order functions, we will see what higher order components are and how we can use them, and we'll definitely code a few higher order components, right? Uh, Absolutely, Keshav, you're absolutely right. Main use of arrow function is basically to bind this uh, to the function, but again, we'll not jump into that. It's a different topic altogether. It would it will basically elicit it will basically get questions for this keyword, and if people are not aware about this keyword, then it will basically lead to some other webinar altogether, right? So we are discussing only higher order functions and components over here. So yeah, so let me just quickly create a React project, guys. So from now on, you can basically try to code along if you want to. If not, then I mean, it's totally perfect as well. I'll make the code available to you guys as well after the session. So I'll put it on my GitHub, so you can just go and check it out over there. But you can definitely code along with me. I'll just quickly open my terminal and I'll create a repository and we can go along, right? So I'll go to desktop. Let me increase the font as well. Okay, CD desktop, and I will be using create React app, guys. So again, this is a tool which we can use to create a React app. If you want to follow along, you can just, uh, follow along with me by using this create React app tool. Or what you can do is you can just go on to JS Fiddle, and in JS Fiddle, it will give you the React boilerplate code, and you can, code along, right? So we'll be working with the HOC, which is a higher order component. Okay, so let's just wait for it to finish setting up the boilerplate. Hmm. So, okay, so great question, Antara. So, Antara is saying that like this function which we have used over here, this callback, can it have multiple arguments? So, definitely, Antara, it can have multiple arguments. And in fact, uh, the other argument which will be index. So guys, the first argument is basically the item, whatever the item of the array are, and the second argument by default will be index, which is basically the index of that particular item, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So whatever item it is, whatever item this particular callback is being called upon, we will have the index of that item as well. So these two items are fixed, these two arguments are fixed, and you can definitely, pass along different arguments if you want to, right? You can do that as well. Hmm. So, guys, again, Kumar, Amresh, we're not talking about lexical scoping and everything, guys, over here. That is an altogether different topic and would take up a lot of time. So, we'll not discuss about scopes and everything. But yeah, if you want that sort of topics to be discussed in sessions like these, just just basically mention in the comments down below if you want on those particular topics, any topic, in fact. Okay, Soumya, we'll talk about React. Hmm. So, Roshan, guys, Create React app is a tool, and using npm and npx is basically, they are just packages. Package management tools, right? So Create React app is a package, and npm and npx is basically are basically the package managers which you can use to manage package, right? So what I have done is I have basically installed Create React app globally, and I'm using that to create the project. If you are not using Create React app globally, you can use npx as well. It's also very famous, and I think in the website as well of Create React app you'll find npx installation only. But it's kind of the same thing. You can just assume it's kind of the same thing only. Okay, so hmm. And guys, you can basically learn about all of these other higher order functions like sort and reduce and things like that on Google. Just Google it out, and you'll definitely have information about those, right? Guys, what I've done over here is I have used the command create React app. HOC is basically just the project name, right? Just write your project name over here. I have used HOC because we are talking about higher order components, and just type your project name. That's it, nothing else. Harkirat, yes, absolutely. Making clones is a good way to learn JavaScript, guys, because if you want to learn JavaScript, then definitely you have to create projects and projects only. That is the way to learn about a technology or anything, basically. So if you're creating clones, you'll get a deep dive into how things work. For example, if you go basically build Facebook clone, then you'll get the understanding of how databases work, how front end works, and things like that, right? So building projects is the only way to learn JavaScript or pretty much any technology. Mm. So guys, again, Angular and React, we cannot talk about those. It will take up the whole session as well. Those are two different topics, right? So our project is ready. Let's go inside it and do npm start, right? So my project is ready, and I can just simply do npm start, and my React project will start as soon as possible. As soon as the server starts, my project will start. Okay, so in the meanwhile, let's uh, discuss about higher order components, guys, in in React. Sorry, not JavaScript. Let me just open the server over here. So this will give me, my server has basically started, or it's starting actually. So Roshan, NPM, and Yarn again are package managers. You can use any. Doesn't make much difference. Yarn is a little bit faster. Yarn is created by Facebook, so you can pretty much use anything. Um, okay. So guys, React. If you some of you are new to React, go check out our previous videos where we talk about React in a little bit more detail. But this particular topic, higher order components, requires you to know a little bit of React, right? For someone who does not know about React, React is basically a UI library for creating user interfaces. It's a JavaScript library and it is used to create user interfaces. It is written in JavaScript. So it's purely written in JavaScript. You can use JavaScript, and it is kind of similar to using HTML as well, you can say, because it uses JSX, which is very similar to HTML. So if you are familiar with HTML, CSS, then definitely you can, get along with the React as well. Right. So this is our particular server which has started, and we can now talk about higher order components, guys. Okay, so first let's talk about what are higher order components. Then we'll talk about why there is a need of higher order components, right? And if you are basically now you already know about higher order functions, so I think by the name of this particular term, higher order components, I guess you can make out what these are, right? So higher order component is basically a component which takes in a component as the argument and returns the component, right? And what do I mean by that? Let's go to React HOC, React docs, guys. React docs is very beautiful. Just go and learn anything about React. If you want to learn anything about React, just read the docs. They're very beautifully written, right? So what I'm trying to say over here is the if I zoom in over here, a higher order component is a component which takes in a component, right? Just forget about the names, guys. This is a component, this higher order component, right? And what are components in React? Components are basically functions only, right? Components are functions only, right? In React or classes, right? We can use function or classes to write components. So what is a higher order component? A higher order component is a component which takes in another component as the argument, and it returns a brand new component. So this function call, this particular function, this is the higher order component, right? It is taking another component as the argument. And when I call this is actually a function. When I call this whole thing returns me a brand new component, right? So that is what higher order component is. And again, it is similar or exactly the same as higher order function. So this particular pattern, so guys, this is a pattern. Higher order component is just a pattern which is very much evolved in React community because it helps you to achieve a few things, right? It helps you to achieve a few things. So let's talk about that. Why are higher order components needed? Right? So guys, we'll definitely see the code as well, and we'll see the perfect example of that as well. But just to get like very clear for you guys, just understand this, that higher order is basically component is a component which takes in component as an argument and returns a new component, right? Similar to higher order function in JavaScript, which takes in a function as the argument in the function, and it can return a new function, right? So similar to that, we have these higher order components. Okay, cool. So hmm, let's quickly deep dive into why higher order components are required, right? And as I told you guys, that higher order component is basically a pattern. It's not a thing in React. It's just a pattern which is basically used to help and to solve a few problems, right? And what is the problem? Let's just code it and see, right? Let's open this, and now let's open our VS Code, guys. I'll be using VS Code. You can use Sublime or anything, basically, pretty much anything. And don't worry if you still didn't get the definition. We'll definitely you'll get it more when we actually take a look at some code, right? You'll definitely understand more then. So don't worry if you not understand till now. Don't worry about that. So again, guys, let me know if the font size and everything is fine. If not, let me know. Right? So let me increase the font size. Okay, so I think this should be fine, guys. So if the font size is not fine, guys, if you still want me to increase the font size, please let me know, guys. If you still want the font size to be increased. Okay. Okay. Okay, cool. So let me just increase a little bit more. Okay, guys. So I think this should be fine, right? Hmm. So well, let me just do a few cleanups before doing anything. Let's create a few components, right? Let's create components like new file. Let's do. So what I'm trying to do over here is that we will just try to understand the concept of higher order components, and will not, I mean, create any app or such things, right? We'll not do that. We'll just try to understand the concept, and that's it. Okay, so let's create a few components. Let's call it button.js, right? And let's uh, make it a class. Oh, this is my button component, guys. Okay, so just a second. Okay, cool. So this is my component, and this will basically be a button, nothing else, a simple button. And here you can see it is like this is JSX. It is not actually HTML. It's kind of like HTML. If you know HTML, it would be great. It is kind of like that. And let's call it hit me or show warning, right? Okay. So now what I want to do is, guys, I'll have different components, right? In my real world project, let's create those component1.js, component2.js, 2.js. Okay, so let me just create these component structure as well. This is my component one, and the other one would be component two. Let's give it a heading, component. Right, so let me just copy this. This is component one. This is component two. Okay, cool. So let me just give some styles as well so that we can quickly identify as well. Color would be red. Okay. Color would be red for this. For component one, let's color the heading as green. And let's use these components, guys. Okay. So component one and two, let's use it in our app. Right. So let's import them first. Import component one from component one, right? Similarly, we'll have component two as well. And now I'll just use these components. Awesome. Now if I go to my project, refresh. Okay, guys. So we have these two components, guys, right? Component one and component two. It's as simple as that. Okay. Let me just quickly give it a little bit more styling, as in I'll just draw the borders as well over here, right? So let me just draw the borders as well, guys. So that would be much more clearer to you guys. Solid green, right? So this is my first component, this green color, right? In fact, let's make it 2 margin bottom 2, right? Or 10. Let's copy this in here. Let's paste this and make it red. Okay, guys. So what I have done up until now is I've just created brand new two components, component one and component two, right? And we have one button.js component as well. These are the three components that I have created, right? And if I go over here, these are the two components, component one and component two. So ideally in your React projects, you will have different kinds of components, right? We have three over here, and I'm using component one over here, component two in the root component, right? Which is the app component. So inside this, we have our two different components. And since you know React is basically based upon the concept of reusing components, right? So for example, if I want to add a button inside my component one, right, what should I do? So I can definitely use this button component inside this component one, right? And if I want to add this button inside component two as well, so I can simply reuse this particular component, right? Button.js component. So let's do that also quickly. What I'll do is as simple as this, I'll just import it from button one, and I will use the button over here, right? So it's as simple as that. And we have our button over here inside component one, right? And now if I want to reuse this component, reuse this button in some other component, right? So what we generally do, we just basically separate it out into a different component, right? And we already have this in a different component, which is button.js. So I can just simply reuse this component in my component two as well, right? So this is the beauty of React, wherein you are creating components so as to you can reuse these components, right? And here you can see we have component one and two. Both of these components have this particular button in common, which is in fact another component, right? So now you see how simple is it. It is basically to share this particular component with different components, right? So now let's say what I want to do is I want to basically show a warning over here, right? Inside this component one, I want to show a warning, right? So when I click on this button, or even when I hover on this button, I want to show a warning at this particular component, right? At the top of the component. And a warning would be a warning message. You can make it error message or anything, right? So let's do that also, guys, quickly. So what I want to do is when I click on the button uh, or hover on the button, I want to basically the show the warning message, right? Let's quickly do that. So what I want to do is I will have a state, obviously. So let's show it on hover. So when I hover over the button or uh, basically the button, I'll show the hover, right? I'll show the warning as well. So I'll have hover. This is my state. So if hover is true, then we'll show the warning. If not, then will not show the warning, right? So let's make it here only. So what I'll say if hover equals to true, I want to show this warning, right? And let's give it a style as well. We will have background of yellow, right, and color of white. And we'll have say, hey, this is a warning, right? And if we go over here, and this should actually be from state.hover. Okay. So here you can see if the state.hover equals to true, then it will basically show me this particular warning, right? And here you can see this is showing me warning. The text is not visible. Let's make it red. Give it a padding as well. Great. So this is the warning, guys, right? It's showing currently because we have just put it over there. We have not written the logic for for hovering and all of that stuff, right? We have not done that yet. So let's do that also. And for that, what we will do is we will basically use the on mouse over and on mouse out events, right? We have on mouse over and on mouse out, right? So what I'll do is on mouse over. This is basically the event, right? So similarly, we have on click events in React. We also have on mouse over and on mouse out, right? We have on mouse over. This will be this, and we will create a function. We'll pass it as a callback, right? And again, guys, we're just simply closing in on the higher order components just a little bit. Be a little bit patient, and then we'll come on to the concept of higher order components. First, we're trying to understand what is the difficulties which we will face, right? And then we'll solve it using the higher order component. So we have on mouse over and on mouse out, right? So the other two things which we'll use, two functions, in fact, and let's write the logic for that. We have on mouse over, and it will do nothing else, just set state, right? However, to be true, right? And we will have on mouse out as well. This will be having hover equals to false. Okay, awesome. So hover is true. Let's make it false. So guys, we have initially we have hover as false, but what I want to do is, in fact, I mean, I think that is fine. Let's make it click for now. Okay, so let's make it click, guys. On mouse click. Let's make it click for now. Let's remove this for now, right? So if I refresh and if I click over here, okay. Let me just increase the font size, decrease the font size, and let's open our console at the top. So currently click is not working because we have to basically use this thing inside the button component, right? So we have this on mouse clicks passed as a prop, and we have to use it over here, not over there. This dot props dot this on mouse click, right? We have on click inside the button component, right? So if we show refresh, and here you see I clicked on it and it says here is the warning. Okay. If I refresh, what I'm doing, I'm clicking on this button, show warning, and it basically gives me this particular warning, right? So is everything up until now clear, guys? What I've done is I've done nothing else, just in my component one, I've basically done state equals to hover false, and I want to show this particular warning when the button is being clicked, right? And we'll talk about it this function later on. Don't worry about that. So we have on mouse click function, which is being basically passed down as the props to the button component, and what it does is it basically on click of the button, it will just call that function, right? And this function is basically what it is doing. It is doing nothing, just making the state as hover true, right? Or we can name it click as well, right? So don't just go into that much detail, but eventually we just want to show the warning on click of the button, right? We have done that. So let's do refresh. And when I click on this, it will give me this warning, right? So do you have any questions, guys, up until now? Any question, guys? Okay, so let's quickly understand one thing over here right now, right? And let's also okay, so that is fine for now. So now what I want to do is, so for example, now comes a requirement wherein you also want to show this particular warning, this warning uh, over here in this component as well, right? So this is a problem for me right now. What I want to do is, what I'll generally do is, I just copy the logic over here from this component one, and I'll paste it in component two, right? This is the normal thing a one person would do, right? So just copy this logic, whatever we have written in component one, and just make it in component two, such that when I call this that particular component, uh, we will have the warning in the component 2 as well, right? Okay, so guys, we are using props because this particular button is a component, right? So let me just make it a little bit more clear to you guys. So let's just move this, forget about props and everything. Let's just move it over here, right? So now we have this button inside the component one itself, right? And here you can see on click, and I'm calling the on mouse click function, which will eventually make the hover state as false, right? So guys, just forget about props, right? Just forget about props. I am using this on click function, on click event handler, to make the state as true, such that my warning shows up, right? Just forget about the button, guys. Just forget about the button. We don't have that component, right? We have a simple button, HTML button over here, and I'm using this on click event handler to call the function over here on mouse click, right? As simple as that. So if I refresh over here, I click on this, it would work the same way, right? Over here. So now what I want to do is, uh, basically, let's do one more thing. So what I'll do is, I'll do not this dot state dot hover. So what it will do is, if the hover state is true, it will make it false when I click the button. And when I click the button again, it will reverse the state, right? So what do I mean by that? If I click on this, it will make it appear. If I click on it, it will make it disappear, right? So I'm just reversing the state of hover on click of the same button, right? Nothing else. So that's the logic, right? So guys, now the fun part is that if someone else comes, if your manager, whatever, where you're working, if you need that particular functionality, where you want to have this functionality, where on click of a button you want to show this warning in component two, right? So ideally what you would do is you would just simply copy this logic. Let's remove this for now. You would copy this logic and paste it in component two, right? You would copy this logic and simply paste it over here. In fact, you would have to copy the state as well, right? And you would have to copy this div as well and paste it over here. And I'll just copy this button as well. and paste it over here, right? Save it. And now if I click on component 2's button, it will show me the warning similar to one, right? So this is the ideal scenario or ideal solution, what generally most people will do, right? And now the main point is that what if there are 100 components and your manager, or if you have the need to have this kind of functionality across each and every component, across all of your hundreds of components, right? If that is the case, what would you do, right? What would you do, or how would you solve that problem, right? And again, guys, here you can totally see that the components are actually similar, wherein you just have headings and a button, right? So what you could do is you could just render 100 component one only, right? And just change the text. That would solve the problem for you. But just imagine it in a way wherein you have a component where there's a particular functionality and you want to have that functionality in other components as well, right? So how would you do that? So here the higher order components come into the picture, wherein higher order components will help you to basically share the non-visual logic which you actually cannot see between different components. So what do I mean by that is, so instead of writing all of this logic, this is the logic, right? Which we cannot see, which is on click of that button, right? To share this logic, what we do is we use a higher order component. And what it would help is, basically I can just remove all of this logic from component 1 and component 2 and keep that logic at one place in that higher order component. And via the higher order component, I can render these component 1, 2, or hundreds of components, and all of that logic will remain at one place, right? So earlier what we saw was that when we have to share these buttons, right? These buttons, we basically created one single button component, right? And we reuse that in the different component 1 and 2, right? But that is basically what you are seeing, right? What that is, you are basically the visual logic, you can say, right? So we are basically just removing this button, this visual logic, or this HTML code, which as you can say, or the JSX code, and move it to a different component and use that component, right? But if you want to share this particular logic, you cannot do so, right, in different components. For that, we use higher order components, because this kind of thing you have to copy and paste if you want to have the same functionality, right? So let's quickly create a higher order component, right? So, okay, so Roshni is asking how the state is changing. So Roshni, here you can see our initial state of hover is false, right? And what I've done is, on this button, I have created an event that basically says on click of the button, just call this function on mouse click, right? And what this on mouse click is doing, it is calling set state, and it is changing the state of hover to the reverse of what it was, right? So if I would have done this, it would basically, for example, this says false, right? And I'll do set state, uh, it will just simply be false, right? It would be false over here. That wouldn't make sense, right? So what I'm doing is I'm saying not of this dot state hover. So whatever the state is, just reverse it. So if it the state is false, not of false will be true, right? It would change to true, right? And if the state was to be true, and not of true is false, so it will change the state to be false. So this is what I'm doing. I'm basically saying whatever the state is of hover, just reverse it. That's it. It's a boolean, right? Either 0 or 1. So when I click over here, let me refresh, you see I can toggle this warning by the click of the same button. That's what I'm trying to do over here, right? Okay, so enough of that. Now let's try to understand the higher order components. Again, what we saw by the definition, a higher order component is a component which takes in a component as an argument and returns a new component, right? Let's see that. So what I will do is, and this is a convention, guys. You can make it, I mean, name your file like anything, but generally we name our higher order components with and the functionality, right? So we'll say with click or with warning. So eventually our functionality is showing off warning, right? With warning dot JS. So now this with warning.js is my higher order component, right? I'll basically now use this, I'll create this higher order component. So how would we do that? So what I'll do is, again, what is a component? A component is can be a function as well as a class, right? I am just writing a function over here. I'm using a function and we'll understand why, right? So I'm saying with warning, this is my function. This is my higher order function, right? And what was the definition? The definition was it will take a component as the argument, right? So what I will get as the argument, I will get the component as the argument, right? And what was the second thing that the higher order component does? It returns a brand new component. So it will return a brand new component, right, guys? So it will return a brand new component. So what is a brand new component? It's a function or a class, right? It's a function or a class, right? So let's use a class for now. We can use function as well. So as you can see, what is the definition of the function of the class? Like this, right? This is a component, right? So let's do this, copy that, paste it over here. So this is, if you see guys, this is the new component which I'm returning, right? I can basically name it anything with warning. I am returning this brand new component, right? So what I have a higher order component which takes in a component as the argument and it returns a brand new component which I'm creating right now over here. So this is the brand new component, guys. This is basically the general definition of higher order components. So are you able to get this, guys? Or do you have any questions up until now? So this is my higher order component, which is called with warning. So is this thing clear, guys? Or do you have any questions? So we have a component which basically gets a component as the argument and it returns a brand new component over here. Okay, so I don't have any questions. So let's quickly go ahead, right? So now what I want to do is using this with warning high order component, I want that particular logic to be shared across, right? Okay, so Keshav is right. We can do something like this, right? So let's import it. Okay, guys. So is this clear? So guys, what I can do is either I can use React and grab component, right? Grab component and use component like this and name it something else. Or I can do something like this, react.component, right? One and the same thing. Okay, so let me just go through it quickly, guys. So what is a high order component? A high order component is basically a component. And what's a component? Components are initially the essentially a function or a class, right? So we have using function over here, and it's a high order component is a component. This is a component, right? With warning is a component which takes in the component as the argument, right? And it returns a brand new component. So I'm returning a brand new component over here, right? So I'm returning a component over here, absolutely. And so this is my component, right? And this component will basically have the functionality of the common functionality, the common visual, non-visual logic that you want to share across different components, right? And what do I mean by that? This particular component will have all of this logic, all of this state. Let's remove it from here. So it will have all of that logic over here, right? And okay. So it will have the logic over here, and let's remove the button as well, which is common to all the components, right? That's why I'm just removing it. So what it will render, guys? So it will render the component which it got. So it will render the component like this. We have to return. So we will add it over here. Awesome. So here you can see this brand new component, right? So which this is the brand new component which we are returning. So it will have all of this logic of state and everything. And what it will render is it will render which we passed as the component, right? And that's right. And the new functionality, this is the non-visual logic which we want to share, right? So essentially what we are doing is, what we will eventually do is, let's actually do it. Let's copy this and export it over here, import it over here. In fact, get that with warning higher order component. I'm getting that, right? So now you see my component one does not have anything, right? That logic at all. Now what I can do is I can simply do this. So here what I'm doing is I'm exporting the new component, the enhanced component, which will have the functionality of clicking and everything, right? So what do I mean by that? My component one is a simple component, that's it. It does not have the functionality of showing the warning or not, right? But now I'm using this with warning higher order component, which will take my component one as the argument, and it will return me, this statement will return me a brand new, this particular statement will return me a brand new component with the enhanced functionality of showing the warning, right? So let's first have a look. Okay, let's just first, let me just close this, have a look if it works or not. Okay, so with warning does not have a import. We will import this as well. Sorry, export. Default with warning and refresh. Okay, so we have one error over here, which is object is not a function. Basically, I have this with warning. I am returning this class. Right? This is my component with all the render and stuff, and I'm rendering my component over here, as you can see. So whatever component I get as the argument, I will basically render it as it is, but with the advanced functionality of all of this stuff, right? Okay, so we have this with warning over here, and with warning component one, we have this. Let's save it, and let's see what the error actually is. Okay, cannot read property hover of null. So we have to remove all of this as well. I forgot to remove this as well from component one. We have to remove this and shift it to with warning, right? So I will show the warning over here at the top, right? And I think everything is fine. Okay. So now if I click show warning, here you can see that my component has the warning over here, right? This is the warning showing. If I click again, it should go away. It goes away. I click again, it shows and not, right? So now you see what I've done is basically moved all the non-visual logic of showing and not showing uh, the warning to the higher order component. Similarly, I can now simply remove all of this logic from here, component 2 as well, right? This is my logic. I can remove everything from here and I can copy this with warning higher order component and just use it on my component 2, right? And if I refresh, you see I have a warning over here, I have a warning over there. I can just make it like this, right? So now you see I have basically just removed the non-visual logic or the functionality that I want to share between different components to a single higher order component. So I don't have any of the logic of clicking and basically showing that warning in the components. I have in that higher order component. Right. This is the nice thing about higher order component, guys. So this is basically used to share the non-visual logic, or if you want to share some code, some logic across different components, you just move that logic to the higher order component and use the components, right? So if I have 100 components as well, I just have to use this with warning higher order component, and it will automatically add that functionality to that component, be it hundreds and thousands of component, right? Irrespective of the number, it will automatically add the functionality to that component, right? So what is happening over here is we have a component and we're using the higher order component to enhance the functionality of my component, right? So for I want to enhance this component to have an extra feature of warning. So what I'm doing is using a higher order component, which is basically enhancing the capabilities of component 2, right? It is rendering exactly the component 2, but with extra logic, extra abilities. So this will return a new component, which will be enhanced component 2, right? So generally you can do something like this. You can say const enhanced component 2 equals to this, and you can return this because we're eventually enhancing the power of a particular component, right? Okay. So question, guys. Let's take questions now. Any question, guys? Okay, so now let's try to understand the logic as well, guys. So let me just open the component, higher order component in side by side. Okay, so here what I'm doing is, guys, again, guys, if you have any questions, just put it in the chat box. I'll take a question, look into the question one by one. But yeah, so we have this with warning, right? We are calling this function, which is a higher order component. We are calling this and we are passing this component 2 as the argument, right? So for me, inside with warning, this component will actually be the component 2, right? It would actually be this component 2. So what it will do is I'm here inside the render method of this new component. I am basically rendering that component which I'm getting as the argument. I am just rendering it as it is, right? So it's basically the same thing when I was using the button component to basically render it in component 1 as well as in component 2. So I just use the button component, right? So it's the same thing. I'm just rendering this component, which will ideally be component 2. So it is rendering all of this stuff, right? It is rendering all of this stuff. So all of this stuff will come over here in this place, and with the extra functionality of this, we have this button on click and we have this as well, right? This is the extra functionality. But again, as you can see, this with warning is the new component, which this is being returned over here is this new component, which is the name of with warning, right? This is the actual name of the component. But eventually, if you can see it, if you can see, you'll not have you cannot make out if it is a higher order component or not. But here you can see I'm just rendering the component over here, and this is the logic which is similar to different components, right? Okay. So I think Roshan, this answers your question. Okay. Okay, so Pranjal is asking, is it necessary to wrap the component one and component two with warning? Can't it be done with the warning component is included somewhere in code itself and then export component one normally? So again, Pranjal, you can see what I want to do is I want to basically reuse this logic. Okay. If I put this logic of state and on click and everything in one component, for example, in component one, I can't just take out that particular logic and export that. I cannot do that into another component, right? You saw me at the very first time when what I did was I had to copy it, right? I have to copy the logic and put it in component two as well, right? If you want that logic to be shared, you have to copy. You cannot just copy, just export the logic and not the component. A component is ideally what it is rendered, right? You cannot just uh, export the component and use its functionality, use its function. You cannot do that. Okay. Hmm. Okay. So guys, again, as you can see over here, I've used this function over here. Again, we can write components in either function or in class form, right? I can do it like that. I'm not using class over here because I cannot invoke my function like invoke a class like this, right? I have to pass that as an argument as well, right? And one cool thing with these higher order components is that this is a function, right? You can basically pass anything over here. So for example, if I pass a second argument, which is the, let's say, the background color of the warning, right? Let's say this should be purple, right? For component 2, the background color should be purple, right? So I can here accept the a second argument as well, and I can use that in my in my this over here as well, right? In my uh, warning, I can use it like this, bg color, right? And in my component 1, I can pass the background color as, let's say, green. And if I save it and if I refresh, you see this is green. And if I make this, you see it is purple, right? So here you see the power of higher order components, which is you can actually pass different arguments as well, whatever you want to, and you can customize your warnings or whatever you want to do basically using a higher order component, right? So what you're doing is you are not copying this logic of showing the uh, warning or not into those two components, but you still have the flexibility of changing the how it is rendered, right? You still have that functionality. So this is that. Mhm. Okay, so yes, guys, we have another pattern which is called render props, which is kind of similar to HOCs. Again, HOC, high order component, is a pattern, right? It's just a pattern to reuse your non-visual logic, as we see over here on mouse click, right? So, for example, guys, I'll just give you one more example of tooltip. So, for example, you want to show tooltip, same tooltip across, let's say, hundreds of buttons, right? So similarly, what you would have to do is you would have to create a state of show true or false, right? So a tooltip will be a small tooltip at the top, which will show up when I hover over the button, right? So it will show up at the top over here, similar to warning, but on instead of on click, it will show on hover, right? So similarly, you can use or you can make it a higher order component and you can name it with tooltip. So whatever button needs to have a tooltip, you just wrap that button with the with tooltip higher order component, and that button will have a tooltip, right? So here you can now see the uses of higher order components, right? Okay. Vignesh, I'll come to your question. Don't worry. We'll just see that as well. Okay. So I think this is clear, guys. So is this thing clear before we move on, guys? I have just created a high order component, and uh, is it uh, is it fine with everyone? Like, do you have any other questions? Okay, cool. So, hmm, hmm, hmm. Okay, so now what I can do is, guys, so, and again, this particular high order components, if you have seen Redux or if you have used React Router and things like that or different libraries, you must have encountered higher order components there as well. So generally, if you have Redux, so there will be with connect kind of a higher order component, and if you have used React Router, there is with router as well. So those are the few things, that few higher order components that are generally used across different libraries as well, right? Okay, so one more good thing about higher order component is, so for example, okay, what I want to do is, okay, so for example, on hover of this component one, right? On hover of this component one, I want to, let's say, show an alert, right? On hover of this component, I want to show an alert, right? So let's do that as well. So I'll create again. I can basically create the logic in components, or I can create a higher order component, which I will do, right? I'll say with alert. Okay, cool. So right, so what I'm actually doing is, let's just copy the with warning one, copy this and paste it over here. Right, but this will be a little bit different, wherein we'll have on mouse over this dot, on mouse over, on mouse over, or name it mouse over, right? And on mouse out, or let's say mouse over only for now. Let's remove all of this. We don't need it, but we need this, right? This one. So what I want to do is, instead of setting state, what I want to do is, I want to alert, let's say hello. Let's remove this. All right, and we have with warning, with alert. Okay, so now I want to use this in component one. What I'll do is, I'll import. And what is the beauty of higher order component is that I can just wrap it like this. Like, so I have my component one, which is already having the functionality of your showing warning and not. And I want to add another functionality, which is called alert. I want to alert the when I hover the component, right? I can totally do that as well. So if I go over here and refresh, so here you can see it showed me the hello you hovered alert as well. So I can basically, okay. So I can basically chain my higher order components as well, like this, right? So we have a component one, which is basically first having the functionality of warning, showing the warning, and this newly returned component would also have an alert functionality that I want to alert something, right? Similarly, I can do it in component two as well, like this, and it should work. I'll have to import it as well, right? And here you can see it says hovered. I'm hovering over here. It says alert. I'm hovering over here. Component two, it says alert, and things like that. So I can basically chain my higher order components as well, right? This is as simple as that, guys. So you can have multiple higher order components, and you can, I mean, just chain your higher order components like this, and you can have the functionality like this, right? So any question, guys? Any questions up until now? Any question, guys? Any questions up until now? Any question, guys? Okay, so guys, this is basically high. These are basically higher order components, and it is a very useful feature, right? And a lot of you might still be thinking, what is the, I mean, use of this since we have hooks and everything. So, guys, let me just tell you, hooks, React hooks, were created because again, higher order component is just a pattern, right? And each and everything has its drawbacks as well, right? So higher order components also have some drawbacks. So that's why React hooks were introduced, right? And let me show you if I can uh, the drawbacks, if I can show you those as well. Application, nope, not over here. Okay. Mhm. Okay, so I cannot show it over here right now, but let me just show you the image, Google image. Yep. Okay. This is one of the drawbacks, or let's use this one. This is the thing, right? Okay, so here you can see we have this demo player component, and so what is happening is here you can see a lot of. Let me increase the size. Here you can see we have width reducer, and all of these things, right? So what is eventually happening is this particular component is being chained with a lot of components, right? This particular component is chained with a lot of higher order components. Just like we did our chaining over here, right? Just like we did our chaining over here with warning to this component, and we chained it with alert as well. Here you can chain it with, I mean, n number of higher order components, right? So here you can see when you render this, it sometimes become very difficult to debug, and you can see it basically creates a wrapper hell for you. That basically means you have wrapped your component into multiple n numbers of higher order components, and it will basically give you a wrapper hell kind of a thing like this, right? So obviously it has its drawbacks, things like that, but you have your React hooks, which solves this particular problem as well, right, guys? Okay. But again, just don't think that you can just create everything with hooks, right? There are a few things that you cannot do with React hooks, which you can do with class-based components, right? So class-based components are not going anywhere. They're not getting obsolete or anything. They will be there for a long time, for sure. And you can create your React app using hooks as well as your class-based components as well, right? You can totally do that. So uh, this is some of these things of HOCs. Okay. So Roshan, again, we are not making a functional component. So there is a different thing. Function components are different. Class components are different, right? I'm not making my end goal of creating an HOC is not creating a class-based component and converting it into a functional component. That's not my end goal. My end goal is basically to share some non-visual logic, right? That is my end goal. Just don't think of it in a way that uh, your component is being converted into a functional component, right? Just think in those terms that this particular component too, it's a simple component, right? You are just enhancing it. You are just giving it some powers, right? So power of showing warning, power of showing alert, and things like that. You're just giving it some powers to that particular simple component. Because if you want to, again, if you have only one component and you have to show all of this thing in one component, then it's for sure that you just do every logic over here in this component, right? Just do it over here. But if you have several components which you want that logic, then definitely, if those are class-based components, you can use HOCs. So it's just a pattern, guys. It's not a, hard and fast rule that you have to create it, right, or use it. Okay, and we have hooks as well, React hooks, which again, using hooks, you can share logic between different components via custom hooks because those are just functions only. So you can totally do that as well. But again, think in these terms that you cannot say that you have now hooks, then you should not know this, right? You cannot say this because what you have is you have a toolbox in your pocket. You can say you have a toolbox in your pocket which you have all of these tools. You have a high order component, right? This is a pattern to share logic, right? You have hooks which can share logic between different functional components. You have render props method as well, which is another pattern to share logic between different components. You have this toolbox and you can use any tool you want according to your need, right? You cannot say that you if now we have hooks, so just forget about HOCs, right? So you cannot say that. So there's a different time and place to use different tools, right? You should know each and everything because a lot of libraries will still use it, and you can also still use it in your applications as well, right? So it's a very powerful pattern to share logic. Hmm. Okay, and over here, guys, you can, where is my component with warning, right? Yep. So here you can, I'm using class, but you can totally use function as well, right? But earlier we used to use only class because we had to manage state, right? But now in functional components also you can manage state using hooks. So you can make it a functional component as well, right? So it's totally fine. But this higher order component will be a function only because you want to pass an argument the component, right? But now you have the flexibility and the power of high order components, how useful they are. You definitely can and should use HOCs in your project if you're using class based components, right? And again, if you're I have created a lot of projects where I'm using class based as well as functional based, right, components. And there are few issues or few problems where you can't use hooks, which will not help you that much, right? So there you can use HOCs, right? I've created several projects where I thought that I would use only functional components, but I encountered a lot of problems where I couldn't use hooks over there, where I had to use HOCs, right? So there will come a time where you will use everything. So just have know these in your toolbox. Just have these concepts, and you can utilize them as your need comes. Okay. Okay. So I think that's pretty much it, guys. I'll post this code if you want. I'll post it on GitHub, and I'll give you the URL in the comments down below. So if you have any other questions, just put it in the comments. If you have any topics that you want to be covered, you just put it in the comments again, and we'll cover that in the later sessions. So I think that is it from me, guys, for this session. These are higher order components. So if you have any questions before wrapping up, let me know, or else we can wrap up the session. Any question, guys, before wrapping up? Hmm. Yes, Jay, let me know. Tell me if you have any questions, anything, guys. Hmm. Yes, Roshan, definitely. We are basically planning sessions with hooks and Redux as well. We'll definitely have a look at those sessions as well. We'll definitely have a look at those sessions. So don't worry about that. Okay. Cool. So, guys, we'll definitely have other topic sessions as well. We'll definitely have those in the coming weeks. You can check out the events page in Coding Ninjas website. Yes, we are planning a hook session, guys. So stay tuned for that. Hook session is coming soon, as well as Redux session will come soon. So just watch out for that. Every event you will have on the events page on the website, Coding Ninja's website, right? Just check out over there. Okay, guys, so let's wrap this up, and thank you guys for joining. I hope you have taken away some pointers from this. I hope you found something interesting from this and learned something from this, right? Definitely, I'll meet you in the next webinar, guys. Till then, take care and have a great night. Bye bye.